Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is going to be a video for my Ramblings of an IT Coach playlist. I was talking to Amanda LaChapelle. She has a podcast and she wanted me to talk about a question. What is one piece of advice that you would give to someone who is non-technical, but coming into a role at a technology company or in a highly technological environment? It could be something technical, it could be something non-technical. I don't know. If you talk to me a lot, you'll find I don't really have one piece of advice. I have a lot of different pieces of advice, and I think that there's just too much to give over to just have one. But I think communication is what everything comes back down to. Communication is the key to everything. It's one of my pet peeves. Um, if you read my mendyonline.com blog, you'll see that there's like a pattern that underlying theme that comes out, and that is that what I strongly excel at is the ability to translate or sit in between and mediate the middleman between two parties, and those parties can either be a piece of software and an end user, or it could be two end users. It could be an executive and an employee. It could be between two friends, two family members. It's just something that um, I've always been good at doing, and I strongly believe the reason for that is because um, I want to make sure what's being said and the way it's being heard are as close to the same as possible, because it's not always the case. In fact, most often it's not the case. People have preconceived notions about what it is a word or a concept is. They also just even have two different perspectives on things. There's a concept of how, if someone is walking by and they see somebody cursing and like kicking a wall or something like that, and they go in their mind like, wow, that guy's a really angry person, and they just keep on walking, and as far as I know, that they've now attributed this guy to being angry. But it's not true. Like that's not always the case. The guy may be angry in that moment, but we don't see the entire history of what happened, and that person may be, generally speaking, not an angry person. It may actually be a very good easygoing person, very friendly and happy-go-lucky guy who just happened to have gotten some extremely bad news or something. Someone smashed into him and didn't bother apologizing a minute ago, and you don't see that. You don't see the history. Like, people don't walk around with their entire histories trailing behind them. All you see is how they act in that moment, and then we attribute their nature to that moment, which is incorrect. And so the point of that is that people's perception, people's perspectives are completely different based off of their situation that's going on, based off their past experience. And even more than that, when someone is talking, they are not always able to get what's in their mind out into the words, or they may even assume what they're thinking is well known and established, and so they feel like it's not necessary to put those into words, and it skips out on the entire context of what they're saying, which causes for a massive misunderstanding. So the one piece of advice I'd give to someone who's non-technical, starting in a technical field, and honestly it applies to technical field too, to technical people too, is to be understanding and realize that when you're having a conversation with someone, it's highly unlikely that you're going to get the entire conversation, the entire intent of the conversation and what they mean to say in that first pass through, which is why we have a conversation that goes back and forth. We have confirmations, and we do writings, and these are all policies and processes that people adopt. Like, service desks. You have a conversation with a customer, you hang up with a customer, then you write up an email summarizing the conversation, you send it to them. What's the reason for that? Well, the obvious reason is because we want to make sure that it's documented what's done, right? That's the one that everyone jumps to. But more than that, and in fact, I don't like that reason because it starts from a reason of distrust, and I'm very much a fan of not starting with a negative and always starting from a positive light, even if there are negative sides that you're avoiding or that you're accounting for or whatever. Which in this case there is, by having that documentation written up and recorded, you can defend yourself if necessary. But that's already thinking in a negative mindset. I much prefer going to the positive mindset, which in this case is, if I made a mistake in my summary, if I don't remember something, I go back to the person I just spoke to in writing, and they can review it and let me know if there's something missing. And I usually always finish my emails with something like, please let me know if I forgot anything. This is what I think we discussed. Let me know if there's anything else that you want to add at this point. And you're basically doing a conversation and then a confirmation of that conversation so that there's room to fix it. And because it's happening across two different types of media, verbally and writing and written form, then there's less room for error because it's more likely you'd have hashed it out across those two different ways. Also, as we know, like, people happen to intake or consume data differently through different mediums. So some people can read something and they understand it perfectly fine and can learn it that way. Others require it to be taught to them via an instructor verbally, maybe in person. Some people, they can't. They can listen to you orally, but they don't really get it until they read it. And some people are good at both. And so having the different types of media in terms of different forms of how that information is transmitted and communicated is extremely helpful. And again, it's not about like, oh, they're going to come after me and blame me for something, and so therefore I want to protect myself. Yes, that happens naturally as like a side effect of doing that write down, but the reason for writing it down is not negative. And again, it goes back to the mindset. Like, the more you start thinking about negative things and how to counteract them, the more paranoid you get about it happening, and it tinges the relationship 100%. So like, there's another known saying, like, a thief is always looking for other people to see who's going to try to steal from them. But normal people don't go looking around to see who's trying to steal from them, because that's not how they think. It's just not their experience. So again, the piece of advice I'd have is understand in a conversation and when communicating that you may not get the full message across right away, or you may not send the full message across right away, and try to have some patience. The longer you work with someone, the more likely it is you'll start understanding their context and you'll learn what it is they think and they behave. I worked with many people for many, many years, and I know, like, for a fact, we can finish each other's thoughts. It's a very cool experience. We have the ability to start saying something, we can say half a sentence, and they immediately know where I'm going with that because they know how I think because of the many years. But that's because of the history that we share at that point that allows us to do that. But primarily speaking, again, going back to the situation where you walk past the guy who's kicking the wall or something like that, you don't see the history, you don't know the context. And so it's always safe to be sure and check. And so when working with technical people, it can be a bit of a challenge, specifically with communicating, because they may not be as socially comfortable talking. They may not have as good writing skills, potentially, or they may not know how to say what it is that they mean to say. So understanding that and allowing for that. Now, when I say allow for that, I'm not saying, oh, excuse them and therefore they don't have to improve. No, I'm saying allow, in your patience specifically, allow for them to be that way, but help them grow and become better at it. Because in the end, everyone has something that they can work on. And I think that's the goal that we should always be going for. But again, really long rambling. Again, this is, I keep saying again, this is the perfect discussion point for the video, as the playlist is called Ramblings of an IT Coach. Short and sweet answer to the question is understand that communication may be difficult and allow for that. I think that's the message that I would say. Hope this was helpful for you. Thanks for watching and have a great weekend.